Good afternoon. Please join me as the Chatter Talks of Brown University. Please rise as members of the Chatter Talks of Brown University sing the national anthem. And please remain standing afterwards for the invocation by University Chaplain, Reverend Janet Cooper Nelson.
Brunonians all, let us pray. Do not be deceived by the chill of the day. This is a midwinter spring where we celebrate with warmth and delight and ask blessing on these stars of Brown's rising generation. Newly illumined by the light of research, friendship, wisdom, these bright lives entrusted to College Hill for a season are about to set forth. As they do, they seek to dispatch the offices of life with usefulness and reputation, with compassion and nuanced thought. We, the grateful, who once received them on sunny, warm summer days, now prepare to open our arms both in embrace and also in leave-taking. These are the legacy of this great university. These are our blessings. They have inherited from faculty, from family, from research, from their own great endeavors, from the richness of friendship, and from benefactors far and wide. A great heritage entrusted to Brown and now entrusted to them, and most especially to the world of scholarship, learning, insight, and compassion. We ask that in all that they do, they may be blessed, and we ask that we receive blessing in this moment of completion. May the bright cord of friendship that has strengthened them and held them in this place to this day bind them ever true to these gates, to this climb, to this hill. May they serve what is good. May they know always what is excellent. And may they know always of their welcome and our great joy at having claimed them for a season, sons and daughters, blessings of Brown. Amen. Be seated.
Thank you, Chatter Talks, and thank you, Reverend Cooper Nelson. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rashid Zia, and I have the pleasure of serving as Dean of the College. And it's my pleasure today to welcome the class of 2019.5. For 30 years, the college has convened this mid-year completion ceremony to celebrate the achievements of students like you, students who are fortunate enough to be members of not one, but two classes, students who have charted their own path through Brown. Whether you arrived as a mid-year transfer, took advantage of a leave away from campus, or pursued extended opportunities to continue your studies here, you will soon be completing your time on campus with us. This ceremony is not meant to replace graduation. Many of you have already walked through the Van Wickle gates last year, and you are all welcome to walk through those gates again this upcoming May, when you will be conferred your official degrees, and every May thereafter as part of commencement, that larger celebration of the Brown community. Today, though, is a moment for you and your loved ones, your family and friends, your teachers and classmates. Class of 2019.5, please join me in a hearty round of applause to thank everyone who has come here either in person or watching on live stream to celebrate you and to celebrate with you. Today is an auspicious day. It is the last day of the first week of the last month of the year, a fitting time to celebrate transitions. Occasions like today often make me think about time and order and purpose, how time helps set the stage for certain events. Growing up, I remember being confused about New Year's. I'm an immigrant. I was born in Iran, but moved to the United States as a small child. In America, New Year's seemed so clear and simple. The new year was marked by the stroke of midnight on January 1st. You stayed up late to watch TV, the ball dropped, and the year was new. But in the Iranian calendar, New Year's, or Nowruz as it's called, literally the new day, is complicated. It actually happens on a different day, at a different hour, minute, and second each year. And it depends on your location. 2 years ago, it occurred a quarter past noon on March 20th. This year, it'll occur 10 minutes before midnight on March 19th. As a little kid, this seemed unpredictable. It was only later, actually when I came to Brown, that I learned Nowruz was set by a precise cosmic moment. The moment of spring equinox. The moment when the sun passes through the plane of the equator and when night and day are equal. And it was through the friendships made here at Brown that I learned years are not defined by clocks, but by shared traditions. I'm lucky enough to have added many yearly traditions to my life, from January 1st and Nowruz to Chinese New Year and Rosh Hashanah, from convocation and commencement to this mid-year completion ceremony. What this has taught me is that not only is life more interesting and complete with many calendars, but also that we are more complete too as individuals and as a community. In some communities, rules and structure define a precise order. A comes before B, B comes before C, and so on. In other communities, though, order is defined by choice, by purpose, and by shared values. As you know well, the Brown undergraduate experience is the latter. Our open curriculum is defined by choice and purpose. Our philosophy of education says that the purpose of undergraduate education at Brown is the intellectual and personal development of the individual student. That students ultimately responsible for their development must be active participants in framing their own education, and that everything else, the structures, rules, and regulations of the university, should follow from this purpose. Indeed, the faculty rules explicitly require us to provide exceptional students like you with, quote, the maximum opportunity to formulate and achieve your own educational objectives, and I would add, on your own time. What some of you know is that these words in the faculty rules came from students. In fact, it was 100 students, much like yourselves today, who helped break the mold at Brown 50 years ago. They wrote that undergraduate education should create an environment in which students are encouraged to formulate and consider the problems which are most basic to them, what their lives are about, why they seek the goals they do, what they want to do, and where they want to go. As Point Fivers, I know that you understand and appreciate these words even more than most Brown students, and that is why we are gathered here today, to celebrate your education and the important role you have played in the education of your classmates and this university. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker and the leader of our community, the 19th president of Brown University, Christina Paxson.
So thank you, Dean Zia, and welcome everybody. I'm very excited to be here this evening, this afternoon, and recognize and celebrate our mid-year graduates, the great Brown class of 19.5. So congratulations to all of you. And to the family members and friends who are here supporting our amazing graduates, thank you so much for joining us today. Please come back in May as they march again. And I know for certain that your support has meant so much to them during their time at Brown. So, graduation ceremonies, I love this one. We have it every year, the mid-year completion ceremony, and every year, while the student speakers are different and marvelous, it runs according to plan, according to how we normally do things. It's very joyous and very wonderful. What changes are the circumstances that our graduates face when they leave. And this changes a lot depending on what's going on in the world. And the circumstances are very much outside of our control. But they shape our lives and they set our paths, sometimes in very unpredictable ways. My personal story is that I graduated from college in May of 1982, a very long time ago. And any of you who studied economic history at Brown know that this was not a good year to graduate from college. The year 1982 was the height of what was then called the Reagan recession, because it started not long after President Reagan's election, and it was caused, at least in part, by his administration's attempts to beat back inflation. The unemployment rate was over 10%. Hardly anyone was coming to campus to interview prospective graduates. And I remember sitting in a long line of nervous seniors waiting for the privilege of interviewing with a financial services firm for a position in, quote, information systems, which I found out when I got in the room with an interviewer was a glorified name for a data entry specialist. I couldn't bring myself to return for the second interview, even though at the time I was very worried about paying back my student loans. And so I did the very logical thing. I went to graduate school. I got a PhD in a subject I loved, economics, and so instead of suffering the consequences of a bad economy, I turned to studying the economy. And as a result, I became an educator and a researcher, which for me has proven to be the most incredibly engaging and challenging career. And it's let me do things that I believe are just so valuable, which is advancing discovery and especially preparing young people, people like all of you, for lives of meaning and purpose. So, who would have thought that President Reagan's fear of inflation, I have that to thank for the privilege of being with you today. And it really is a privilege. So, on the economic front, I can tell you that you're fortunate to be completing your college education in 2019 in some respects. The most recent jobs report showed that the unemployment rate now is incredibly low. It's 3.6%. The unemployment rate for college graduates is about 2.1%. I think that's the lowest in a very long period of time, if not in history. So if you don't have one yet, don't worry. You will find a job, or you'll go to graduate school, which is equally good. The privilege of being conferred a college degree at a time like this is really extraordinary. And yet, I would say there's a caution here, which is that the mood of this country is not what you would expect from the job reports. The Pew Research Center conducts social and demographic research on issues and attitudes and trends that are shaping our world, our country. And while Americans are feeling somewhat hopeful about the future of the US over the next 30 years, they anticipate a decline in specific issues, including the country's standing in the world, economic well-being, and our ability to address social and environmental issues. Many Americans are concerned about the probability of a terrorist attack or another school shooting, widening income inequality, rising healthcare costs, and the existential threat of climate change. In addition, the Southern Poverty Law Center continues to track a very disturbing surge in hate crimes and bias-related incidents, with increases motivated by anti-immigrant, anti-Black, anti-Semitic, anti-LGBTQ sentiments. So these things like global security and economic and social progress and environmental sustainability, these are among the most important challenges of our time. So I'm not saying this to be depressing or to make you feel despondent about the future. Far from it. But I do want you to leave Brown with a clear-eyed understanding of the challenges that we face. And I want you to think seriously about how graduating into this world right now might affect your life trajectory. And the most important thing is how you do this is really your choice, just as it was your choice about how you would carve your path through Brown. You enter your post-graduation world incredibly empowered. You may not fully realize it yet, but you have all of the knowledge and the experiences and the connections that a degree from a university like Brown confers. And you have the privilege of choosing how to use that power to make change that might help heal a divided world or protect an imperiled planet. I'm confident that you will do this in the most splendid way possible. I've watched all of you over the last 4.5, 5, whatever many years, and all of you have accomplished so much in your time at Brown, and we'll see this from the student speakers, but you've launched startups and you've contributed to pioneering research and you've partnered in a very impactful way with community organizations and so much more. And so now, as you leave College Hill and you segue into a changing world that needs you more than ever, you are more than well prepared, and that's a wonderful thing. You leave here as thinkers and builders and innovators, and you leave, I think most important, as compassionate citizens with a keen sense of responsibility to make life better for others. So today, let me just say and close by saying that I couldn't be more prouder than I am of all of you for completing your degree requirements on your own terms and for looking forward to really wonderful lives and careers. I offer you my very best wishes. I encourage you to stay connected to Brown. Thank you very much and congratulations.
Thank you, President Paxson. As advocated by students 50 years ago, a central aspect of our curriculum is the relationship of the student with professors and fellow students and with the material they approach together. It has been university tradition since the very first class, more than 250 years ago, to hear from students completing their time here. Today, we will hear from two of your classmates. It is my pleasure to introduce our first student speaker, Warner Meadows. Warner is a music concentrator hailing from Harlem, New York. He loves making music and music videos, exploring new places, and reading. While at Brown, he has performed in and around both Providence and Boston, advanced the learning of peers by facilitating the Masculinity 101 program, and worked on various creative projects with his talented classmates. After Brown, Warner will be moving back to New York to pursue music and to continue cultivating relationships with family and friends. Please join me in welcoming Warner to the stage.
I want to play you guys one of my favorite songs. This is the song. This is the song that I wake up to every morning, and to me, this is a song that embodies the spirit of improvisation. This song is called Strasbourg Saint-Denis by the late jazz trumpeter Roy Hargrove. In middle school, I stumbled upon a video of Roy and his band playing the song in Paris, and I was mind blown. The instrumental solos in the song were absolutely incredible. All three musicians are master improvisers. Because I'm a pianist, I was especially drawn to the piano solo by Gerald Clayton. As he was playing the keys, he put his left hand inside the piano to mute the strings, so it almost sounded like you were listening to an electric guitar solo instead of a piano solo. I had never seen this type of creativity before. It's the type of creative decision he was only able to make because he let himself get lost in the song, because he let the spirit of the music guide him. I wanted to be free like that. I wanted to be that type of improviser. Many of my role models in life are musicians, and I can confidently say that music was my first love. What draws me to many of my favorite musicians is their ability to improvise, to enter a new sonic world and maneuver through it with nothing more than faith and confidence in their preparation. These days, I'm really moved by artists like FKA Twigs, Frank Ocean, and Kendrick Lamar, just to name a few. Artists like these inspire me to bring the spirit of improvisation into my life, which has been integral to my time at Brown. As Point Fivers, we've all utilized improvisation in different ways during our college careers. Being a Point Fiver implies adaptability. It means being okay with choosing the road less traveled. I think we all know how difficult of a decision that can be. As I proceed with my speech, I urge you all to think about your own unique paths and the ways in which you've had to improvise to get to this point. For me, improvisation and adaptability have come in the form of navigating the liminal spaces that I've inhabited here for the past 4.5 years. The first of these liminal spaces that I've had to navigate has been trying to get my music career off the ground while also being a full-time student. By the time I got to Brown, I knew that I wanted to make music my life's pursuit. Knowing one's passion from a young age is exciting, but it's also incredibly stressful. Sometimes it didn't seem like this liberal arts education would directly benefit me in the music industry. I remember discovering Daniel Caesar during sophomore year and being simultaneously elated and mortified. Here's this artist who was only a year older than me, who was living out his dream and making beautiful music, while I was getting a different virus every week and struggling and staying up until 5 a.m. trying to get my essays in on time. Through talking to my fellow Point Fivers here in the room, I know that many of us have experienced the same sort of frustration. We're all very ambitious people. We all aspire to change the world in our own unique ways. Because of this passion, the slow-moving journey towards self-actualization can feel agonizing. But despite the dilemma of having to choose between school and music, Brown has been an intensely creative experience. I wasn't able to work on music with the same dedication that I would have if I had gone to a music conservatory. However, I've been blessed with the time and space to interrogate who I am as a person and my place in the world. These insights have helped me to create art and achieve various milestones over the past few years that I'm really proud of. Some people might ask, if you're taking music this seriously, why even go to college? Why pay all that money and go through all that stress? Mom, I'm sure you wondered the same thing. The thing is, though, I genuinely love learning. I love meeting other students with completely different lived experiences than my own and learning from the brilliant professors here. We all chose to embark on this journey knowing that it would be difficult. Yet, we opted to lean into the discomfort, knowing that growth lay just beyond view. Now, Brown hasn't been easy by any accounts. There have been times when I felt so sad and lost that I just wanted to leave. It seemed like quitting would be less painful. Part of improvisation is being content with the unknown, and while I agree with this sentiment, it's much easier said than done. Splitting my time between school and music made it impossible to commit fully to either pursuit. Choosing to camp out in the Rock to finish a research paper meant I was sacrificing recording time. Recording all night meant I wasn't taking the time to fully absorb my assigned readings, which I was really interested in. I often felt drained, especially during my sophomore and junior years when I was in the thick of it. But at the end of the day, I'd never trade any of those experiences, good or bad, because they've made me into a more mature and empathetic person. I've learned that compromise is important and that I should aim to do the best I can in all my endeavors as opposed to seeking perfection. The challenges that I've faced have helped me to fit my experience into the larger puzzle that is Brown. Some students come here and they don't have to improvise at all. The geography is familiar, and attending an elite institution feels like their birthright. Others come to Brown and they have to fight for their education. They have to fight to be seen and accommodated, constantly maneuvering through foreign terrain. Wherever you might fit into the Brown puzzle, I know that as .5ers, we've all had to adapt to unexpected circumstances. For me, it has been these unexpected, often stressful situations that have facilitated my greatest moments of growth. I'm way more equipped to take on the world than I would have been had I decided to forego my college education and go straight into music. Another liminal space that I've been navigating since grade school is my positionality as a Black person in predominantly white institutions. As a Black student existing in spaces that I know weren't made for me, it can be difficult to feel seen or to feel like a priority. It's hard being in classes where no one looks like you, having an advisor who can't really understand you, or getting psychological counsel from someone who can't really relate to you. Knowing you go to a school that benefited from slavery is also really disturbing. This summer, I went to the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, Alabama, to learn more about the history of slavery in America. While I was there, I found the lynching records of some of my own ancestors. Sometimes walking around this campus, I felt like I was carrying the weight of the Meadows name on my back. I felt like I was working so hard to get this education because it might somehow counteract the years of injustices committed against my family and my people. This is one of the realities of existing as a person with marginalized identities in most institutions. However, I've met so many people of color at Brown who have made me feel seen and feel validated. These are people who are incredibly thoughtful about marginalization of all kinds and passionate about dismantling systems of oppression in America. These are people who attend protests, curate their own workshops about colorism and misogynoir, and create socially conscious works of art. It is because of these positive forces in my life that I felt able to start exploring my Blackness more wholeheartedly. I've taken some life-changing classes in my time here, from an academic study of hip-hop and the culture surrounding it taught by Professor Trisha Rose, to a literature class focused specifically on Black writers and poets, to a class studying the life and work of Nigerian musician and icon Fela Kuti. I'm sure that many of you have found these sorts of enriching and meaningful experiences in your own classes. The thing is, though, Brown moves so fast that it's easy to switch into autopilot. There's something about leaving this bubble for a little while that can help us to recenter and refocus our passions at school. For me, that meant demanding more of myself and of Brown. I resolved to get as much as I could out of my remaining semesters. I began to take on more leadership roles. I started to reconcile my Blackness with my religion. I hadn't been to church seriously since I was 14 and didn't even know if I believed in God. But something inside me pulled me to the Black Christian Ministry group on campus, and I've been going almost every week since. College was the first time it really felt cool to be Black, and not cool in a tokenized way based on stereotypes. When I'm here, I feel much more understood and in community with Black people other than my family. College is where I realized it was cool to be Black, to be vulnerable, to fail, and to be joyful. This whole experience has been a privilege. Most people go through life in survival mode without the time to interrogate their feelings on a deep level. They just aren't given the space to open up. At Brown, we've all been given that space. We've all been given opportunities to find that space. The space to belong, to allow ourselves to just be joyful without second guessing it, and the space to express vulnerability. But opportunities are not enough. We have to trust ourselves to be present when they arise. We have to learn to improvise. I had to find a way to both acknowledge the racial history of this institution while seeking solidarity in the very same place. I had to unlearn the toxic narratives of race and gender that were floating around in my head after going to a high school where I was one of only 9 Black students in my grade. I had to open myself up to new experiences, like joining Black Christian Ministry out of the blue, or deciding to live in Harambe, the only historically Black dorm and community space at this university, during my last semester, instead of living off campus as most of my friends chose to do. We've all found the communities most important to us through intuition. No one can direct us to the right people better than we can by simply following our hearts, and following the heart is improvisation in a nutshell. In the spirit of community, I want to take a second to thank my family, my friends, and the faculty who've helped me along this journey. I can't even begin to name all the people who shaped my life for the better, and I just want to express my gratitude. Our time here wasn't scripted. Most of us couldn't have predicted our college experiences playing out the way that they have, and to me, that's a beautiful thing. The same way that Roy Hargrove crafts a silky smooth trumpet solo, or Kendrick Lamar weaves disparate words together over a beat to create sonic poetry, we too have successfully improvised our experiences here and created one beautiful piece of music. As we leave Brown and move into new phases in our lives, we can take the same spirit of adaptability with us and apply it to new challenges. As Miles Davis says, composing will always be a memory of inspiration. Improvising is live inspiration, something happening at that very moment. Do not fear mistakes. There are none. I ask that we all strive to transition into our new lives without fear of mistakes, seeking inspiration from even the most unexpected places. As long as we can keep the spirit of improvisation alive, the future is brighter than ever.
Thank you, Warner, for the speech and for sharing your music with us today. Later, we will all have an opportunity to hear one of Warner's original compositions during the class recessional. Next, it is my pleasure to introduce Maita Eyzaguirre. Maita is a talented music concentrator from a Chilean and Trinidadian American family mainly raised in Italy. Maita loves making and sharing music. Indeed, we all heard one of her original compositions during the class processional earlier during the ceremony. Maita also loves teaching and learning. While at Brown, she tutored through Bright, the Brown Refugee Youth Tutoring and Enrichment Program, and helped enrich the learning of her peers as a teaching assistant in numerous music department courses. She'll be pursuing a fulfilling life after Brown full of music, loved ones, and learning. Please join me in welcoming Maita to the stage.
Thank you. I began my college career certain of one thing. Music school was going to be exactly like the movie Fame. And ever since I was 15 years old, I dreamt of being a composer. You know the one, old guy, sits in a chair with a fountain pen and manuscript paper and writes music all day long, usually wearing a big curly white wig. Can't you see the resemblance? I wanted nothing more than to be just like that. However, when I got to music school, I realized I was actually certain of absolutely nothing, mainly because I never got to do any elaborate dance scenes with my classmates. It was a real shame. I would go from sitting in one chair to the next, from the piano basement to my desk, from reading music to playing music to writing music. And just like that, most of my days were spent behind closed doors, in tight spaces, focusing on very specific skills. I became trapped. Little by little, this started to drive me mad, and my madness was supplemented by the less than supportive environment that closed spaces often foster. I noticed that my skin was raw from microaggressions, and my mind was hungry to reconnect with all of the life going on outside of that dreadful piano basement. By the end of my first semester, I had to pause. So, I decided to leave music school in search of topics I couldn't even imagine. And Brown was the only place where I saw myself doing that. When I transferred to Brown, I was comforted in knowing that the university has phenomenal professors in each and every department who could offer intellectual and interpersonal growth. As mid-year graduates, we've been uniquely positioned to take advantage of the flexibility at this university. And we've arrived at this stage at our own pace, walking to our own tempo. For many of us, that included a pause. As I began my time at Brown, in the spring of 2016, I could not have been more excited and ready for the opportunities to grow. In the previous year alone, I had spent the equivalent of 35 days in the piano basement, which is the same amount of time it takes to walk from Perkins to Page Robinson 4,200 times. Transfers, you know how far that is. Except I wasn't moving at all. I was in a basement. So believe me when I say that I was ready to get up and move. I stayed true to my 15-year-old self by taking independent studies in composition, but I fed my hungry mind by taking courses on decolonizing African education. I also found out that Brown has a piano basement itself. So if I missed my old life at any point, I knew exactly where I could go. As spring turned to summer, I went home to Chile, expecting to return to my friends and professors in 3 short months. But one day in June, my father was admitted to the hospital, and the next day he was in a coma. Soon, my family and I were hit with words such as end-stage liver disease and cancer. And in that moment, I paused for a second time. I paused because I didn't know if my father would wake up. I didn't know what tomorrow would look like, let alone next week, month, or year. During this pause, I checked in with myself and asked, what do I need? And honestly, I couldn't find the answer because I knew I needed my father, but that just wasn't in my control. It was in this pause that I chose to stay with my family in Chile, because just as I needed them, they needed me. I wish I could say that this choice was made out of bravery or the desire to grow, heal, and reach my full potential, but it was made out of fear. Fear of losing a parent, fear of being absent, fear of not knowing how to deal with the pain. And the year that followed, it did indeed take forever. For many of us, our time away from Brown was difficult. For others, it was joyful. And for some of us, it may even have been simply dull. But we each took the time and had the courage to honor what was drawing us outside of this institution. I came back to Brown in the fall of 2017 with my mind on high alert and with 2 family members recovering from a major and life-changing surgery. Although physically I remained unscathed, my mind and heart felt their pain profoundly. And that's how my real time at Brown began. It began with counseling and psychological services. This is Colleen, how may I help you? It began with missing new friends who had already graduated. It began with my desperately trying to connect with people and never feeling fully seen. It began with an unexpected and surprising sculpture of a giant blue bear being crushed by a lamp on the lower green that everyone seemed to have already dealt with. This is where I understood what it means to be a mid-year graduate, or as we call it, .5er. Being a .5er means taking the time. For some of us, it means taking the time to step out of one classroom and explore the vast options at a place like Brown. For others, it means exploring everything that can be learned and experienced outside of educational institutions altogether. For some of us, it means graduating early, which I frankly didn't even know was possible. Sometimes it means staying at home, working hard to support our families. Sometimes it means taking the time needed just to get back on our feet. Sometimes it's taking the time to feel pain that can only be imagined until it is there, aching in front of us, begging for our attention. I took time at first to take care of myself and discover what I wanted out of my education, and then to take care of my father, support my mother, and love my sister. And as I got back to Brown, I found that I still needed time. I needed time to heal, time to enjoy the fresh air, time to play with children. I think I will always need time for these things. And just like that relative who always has something to say, Brown has some strong ideas on what we should be doing with our time. But Auntie Brown also helps us carve out space for ourselves, for our voices, for our needs, for our pain, and space to love. For me, that space looks like supplementing a music degree with education and ethnic studies courses to nurture my mind while tutoring and getting to know the most wonderful Syrian family, where I get to read stories, play, and eat baklava, of course, which nurtures my soul and my sweet tooth. All of us have found our homes in diverse groups and spaces at Brown that nurture the wonderful complexity that exists within. When we are forced to pause and think about where we need to be, what we need to give ourselves and the people we love, we are taking time that is usually spent doing things and using it to decide what is truly worth doing. When we pause to take time, we don't need to know what the future holds or if the pause will even be worthwhile. We need to figure out what is missing in our lives, what we owe ourselves and our communities. We ask ourselves, what do I need? Where do I need to put my heart, soul, and energy right now? I've been asking myself, how can I support my people in Chile who are fighting for their basic human rights? Their calls for justice and equality have been met with brutal state-sanctioned violence. Over 230 people have lost their vision due to bullet wounds, but we still see the truth, and we know the justice that we are owed. In this time, I ask myself, how can I help from abroad? In a world with a multitude of issues yelling for our time, how do we choose which ones we can devote our energy to? Tackling these questions is why our time and experiences are vastly different. Our decisions are unique to us. The time we have taken to make these choices has allowed us to forge our own paths, to take control of our multidimensionality, and to honor our ancestors, the people who came before us, who made it possible for us to have this time. The future is still very uncertain, but our strength lies in the ability to make time even when it is not presented to us, because we recognize the importance of grappling with difficult questions so that we can better represent our future. I speak for the class of 2019.5, knowing that somehow beyond our plans and beyond our expectations, we see pathways emerging that will take us places where we can continue to grow and give and be thankful. So we thank Brown, we thank our friends and professors for their invaluable love and support. We thank our families, and I want to thank the Actarini family because you have brought so much love and joy to my life. And I'm so grateful that my father can be here today to see me graduate. Out of the stops and starts, the pains and the joys, we feel hopeful and prepared for whatever may come. And if we have any doubts, we know that we can always take the time to pause. Congratulations, class of 2019.5. I am so honored to finally be graduating. Woo! And to be graduating with such a remarkable and inspiring group of people. Thank you.
Thank you, Maita. As you can see from the banners that were outside as we walked in, this year we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Brown's Open Curriculum. A key aspect of our curriculum is the relationship and close partnership of students with faculty on this campus. Our next speaker is someone who embodies that partnership. We asked you, the class of 2019.5, to nominate faculty members to speak at this celebration. And I am delighted that you recommended Cristina Mendicino, Associate Professor of German Studies. Those of you who nominated Professor Mendicino know that she is a remarkable scholar and skilled teacher. Like all of you here today, Professor Mendicino also chartered her own educational pathway. As an alum of Dartmouth College, she studied English and then went on to pursue graduate study at Yale's School of Drama. While there, she took courses in the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, though, and decided that while she enjoyed dramaturgy, she wanted to pursue a career in scholarship and teaching. She pursued her passion for German studies, completing a PhD at Yale, and subsequently fellowships in Bonn, Frankfurt, and Tübingen, Germany, before joining the faculty at Brown. Professor Mendicino is the author of several books, including the 2017 Prophecies of Language, The Confusion of Tongues in German Romanticism, and the forthcoming Announcements on Novelty, that analyzes the language of announcements and the notion of novelty in revolutionary texts. Please join me in welcoming Professor Mendicino.
Thank you so much for this generous introduction. But above all, thank you so much for the honor and for your invitation to participate in this day in your lives. I am so touched by the call to speak at this celebration of your achievements, of all your hard work, of all those unique paths, responsibilities, and decisions that you have taken and taken on to complete your Brown degree, but also to do so much more. I extend the very sincerest congratulations to all of you, and I hope that you will join me in applauding you. I do not know how to commence this speech, except by recommencing with the word that I received from you, and that is an invitation to speak. And in being invited to speak, I felt and continue to feel an immense, immeasurable responsibility. Since I heard from you, I have been asking where I could even begin to respond to all of you, whether we will have met before or whether we meet now for the first and only time. How would it be possible to speak in general to a situation that would instead, I believe, require each and every one of you to be addressed in an utterly singular way, in response to your utterly incommensurable stories, and in mindfulness of our differences? A general response would hardly be sufficient, because even if it could be made to seem situation appropriate, it may still not be a way of speaking and responding to you, but would risk speaking to someone who is not here, to some fiction perhaps of a general addressee. But this is not, and not only, the annual mid-year completion ceremony, it is each of yours. Which returns me to my initial question, what can I say in response to you? And what speech does our situation call for? Rather than pretending that I have the answer or that it is in my power to even give something close to an adequate response, I would like to take these questions as a sort of common ground and as a point of departure in speaking with you. As someone who decided to spend day and night thinking, reading, speaking, and writing about what language allows, and not only under the auspices of a literature department known as German Studies at Brown, but also in office hours, advising hours, politics, and friendships, I believe that nothing could be more urgent than the question of what speaking and listening entails, even and especially when it is not certain what is demanded in a singular situation, even and especially when it is not certain how to respond. But in speaking this way, I am also speaking, I hope, to your tremendous achievements. For each of you, each in a different way and under different circumstances, will have arrived here today by giving your voice in and beyond the classroom, by raising urgent questions, by expressing protest, by answering both the challenges that you sought as well as the challenges that found you along the way. And let me also say before I go on that it is humbling to share the stage with two stellar musicians. And I am thankful for this because it also reminds me to make explicit that when I refer to language, to speaking, and answering, I mean all of these things in the very broadest sense. Their expression could take place through words, music, gestures, drawings, glances, pauses, or silences, through whatever it is that carries your voice and that lets your reticence resound. So one more time, how to respond. And again, what is called for in speaking. In asking these questions, I am reminded of two passages from a novel by Maurice Blanchot that has shaped what I feel I can say about them more than I have the ability to say on my own, and that revolve, I think, around the demands of an encounter. Both of the passages that I'm about to cite come from a minimal dialogue between two figures who are addressing an urgent need for speaking. The first passage speaks to the risks of speaking. When one speaker reaches out, the words miss their addressee, or so it would seem, since it is said, "You do not speak to me, you speak to someone who is not here to hear you." And the second passage speaks to the demand that another speak nonetheless beyond what is known to be possible. It goes like this. Yes, speak to me now. I cannot. Speak without the ability to do so. you so calmly ask me to do the impossible. These two passages may seem to be very remote from the situation that we are celebrating here. At least there was a joke. But I do believe that this brief dialogue from Blanchot's story marks a very important pause in dialogue and through dialogue that speaks to the often unspoken conditions for an intervention, be it in a classroom discussion, a private conversation, or a public debate, whenever learning, deliberation, or simply encountering another is truly in question. And that means whenever the outcome and even the direction and the participants in a dialogue are not predetermined or decided in advance. And let me pause to thank Maïta for this inspiring word of a pause. Blanchot's dialogue marks an outspoken pause where no prior script or prior knowledge would seem to suffice. The want for words is why there is a most urgent need to speak. And when this happens, risks are run, speaking seems impossible, and the speakers place themselves at stake. But as we see, a response is given, the impossible is done, and the dialogue goes on. Because even the seemingly negative answers in the dialogue that I just quoted, I cannot speak, you ask me to do the impossible, these are spoken answers. If speaking can still be called impossible, then impossible cannot refer to something that does not happen. The speaker does what is said to be impossible to do as she speaks. The impossible would have to refer to what exceeds anything that the speakers may already know to be possible, take for granted, or assume to be in their power. Speaking and responding can take us outside of that realm of possibility, I believe, and into the impossible, into a situation where radical uncertainty and responsibility coincide, but where, for that very reason, what was known to be possible before, or what was simply assumed to be, can be exceeded, for better and also sometimes for worse. Yet as you will have shown with your words of protest, but also with your most urgent questions and interventions over the past years, the uncertainties that accompany all that can be said are also what allow for the most seemingly certain assumptions and the most authoritative demands to be unsettled, since there could be no demands of authority, there could be no dogmatic, oppressive claims if there were not a moment of speaking. And that means if there were not a moment where all involved rely upon at least one thing that is not in anyone's power, even if it were to be abused for the purpose of gaining power. There would be no demands of authority and no dogmatic claims, that is to say, if there were not a moment where all involved rely upon the language that they are speaking, which they did not invent, which is other than they, and which comes before anyone can even say you or I, let alone make a demand or establish a claim. This is what it would mean, I think, to speak without the ability to do so, as Blanchot had said. Language does not come, first of all, from us, from our power or ability alone. It comes to us, and it goes beyond us, thanks to others. And it is the fact that everyone speaks without the ability to do so, in this very specific sense, that makes, in principle, every claim to certitude open to question, that in principle renders all data a question of interpretation and truth an infinite task, and that in principle speaks against every assertion of privilege from within it. There may persist the possibility that speakers fail to speak to one another, or worse, that someone is refused the possibility to speak. Yet when speaking comes to happen through whatever avenue, then what happens next opens up, however minimally. Then there may be situations where the parameters of possibility as we know it can be explicitly called into question, where the status quo may be explicitly shown to be unsettled, as it really is, and where the orders and assumptions that once demanded to be imposed without question can explicitly be exposed themselves as uncertain and as questionable as they really are, because they are utterly reliant upon what no one, even someone in power, has the power to own, namely, the words that are spoken. What I am describing with the help of Blanchot, with the emphasis upon risk, uncertainty, and impossibility, may sound negative, but I hope that it is already becoming clear that the uncertainty, the not knowing in advance that comes along with each situation that demands and allows for a response is precisely what also gives the greatest hope, because it may hold open the space for an encounter, for a game-changing intervention or improvisation. And here I thank you, Warner, for this inspiring word. This uncertainty, this not knowing in advance, not only involves immense vulnerability. In the best of situations, and by this I mean those situations where speaking can take place among others as others in a dialogue that is not already decided. It also lets those who speak, along with the situation itself, to be questions to one another and to themselves. And beyond that, even in less hospitable situations, the uncertainties that accompany speaking may nonetheless entail the possibility that something will happen in speaking to another, with another, in that something of what is said will have spoken in a way that remains beyond even the one who may have happened to say it, and that something will therefore take place that goes beyond what anyone could have hoped for, and for the better. At a later moment in the same novel by Blanchot that I have been quoting, this possibility is addressed when the figure who has so insistently been asking another to speak says, "Perhaps you will only speak to me unaware that you are doing so." You never know when a word, a note, a gesture, or a silence is going to mean something to another in advance. This is impossible. But just as you never know whether or how your speaking will reach another, you also never know when you will speak in a way that will make a radical difference. This is the other side of the coincidence of responsibility and uncertainty that I have been speaking about. And it is all the more reason to keep allowing for your situation to speak and to keep trying to speak to it. But another way to put what I'm saying is to say that in speaking with one another and in responding to a situation that exceeds what we know ourselves to be able to do or to say, and this means in responding to a situation that goes beyond what is possible as we know it, we might do the impossible and open up to another future than any that could have been foreseen at present. Now, in saying these things, I do not believe that I am telling you anything new. I am trying to speak, still in a far too general way, in praise of what you will have said and done here and beyond. Because you will have done the impossible every time you spoke for what is at stake for you, with all of the uncertainties and risks that that responsibility entails. But let me cite some examples that are more specific to this situation. At some point several years ago, you will have all gotten the call or the letter to come here to pursue your studies under the auspices of the open curriculum, whose principles say nothing of earning high grades, nothing of mastering bodies of knowledge or techniques, nothing of following a particular course of study, and nothing of preparing for a certain post-graduation plan. The first principle reads, I quote, that students ought to take an active role in their education by assuming responsibility for the direction of their learning. And before any particular direction of your learning was adopted here, you will have entered this space without the possibility of knowing what you were getting into. It's true. Me too. Without the possibility of knowing what you would learn, without the possibility of knowing whom you would speak with as you learned it, and without the possibility of knowing how your responses to professors and peers and others, as well as their responses to you, would shape that experience. The first responsibility that you undertook, that is to say, began by responding with acceptance to the uncertainty over what each situation would mean and demand of you. And you answered, you entered into dialogue with it, the impossible. As point fivers, you will have paused, improvised, and responded to the unique and unanticipatable circumstances that called upon you between then and now. And you did it, the impossible. And upon this day of celebrating the completion of your Brown degree, you will have already said yes to the future, which can only be a future insofar as it is not already scripted, prescribed, and known in advance. And you will have done it again, the impossible. If I had to leave off these remarks with a word of advice, I would say, keep giving your voice. Keep attending and responding to the urgent need for speaking in the way that has brought you where you are. It is my hope that you will go on speaking and asking questions that open possibilities for further speaking. That you will go on speaking out and holding out for nothing less than the impossible, because that is what we have to go on and is what we have to go on. I hope for the unknown futures that I know you will make possible when you give your word. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mendocino. Now I'd like to welcome Dean Shannon O'Neill and Wendy Sheridan onto the stage to help us for the highlight of today's festivities. In a few moments, we will present to the students, we will present you the students who will be completing their degrees this month. Students, as your name is announced, please come forward to receive a small memento of Brown. Families and friends, we kindly ask that you hold your applause until the last student has crossed the stage. We'll see how that goes. Okay.
Warner Meadows. Maíta Ezeguera. Ellen Jiang. Julia Kallstrom. Louisa Nye. Emily Davies. Katrina Heilbronner. Samuel Waxman. Kimberly Lay. James Damore. David Liu. Tucker Ped. Denali Hodgden. Claudia Villalona. Valentina Cano. Manuel Gorotiza. Ella Feldman. Sophie Zakarakis. Bridget Van Dorsten. Kobe Pereira. Lakita Childs. Andrew Livingston. Margot Draycott. Addie Schutz. Dhruv Singh. Theodore Lau. Mara Dolan. Colin Kent Daggett. Oriana Von Prague. Sophie Kupets. Rachel Rude Ajalvo. Tal Frieden. Alyssa Rodriguez. Leah Meshnik. Julia Horwitz. Noah Makover. Max Schoenfeld. Joshua Waldman. Michael Freeman. Vijay Narayanan. Wyatt Ingalls. Kevin Morales. Rohit Chaparra. Madeline Becker. Adam Janik. Solomon Klein. Xiao Wei Yop. Bala Fatah. Adi Malamed. Anika Naim. Sumaya Saeed. Julius Sun. Nadine Hernandez. Daniel Jason. Maximilian Dobkowski. William Hawkins. Alexandria Cavallaro. Catherine Campo. Tim McMahon. Emily Sif.
Please join me in congratulating the class of 2019.5. Before we conclude, I'd like to take this moment to thank our student speakers, Maita Esagire and Warner Meadows, again, for both their words, wisdom, and the music that they shared with us for this special occasion. I want to thank my colleagues in the college, especially Wendy Sheridan, Dean O'Neill, and Deans Bhattacharya, Cohen, Dennis Johnson, who joined us today. I'd also like to thank Jennifer Charette, Megan Silvestri, Michael Malpidi, and Mikhail St. Germain from University Events for actually organizing this celebration. And thank you, Amalia, Jovi, Lewis, Mike, Paul, and Shwedi from Media Services for zooming it out to the world. Please join me in thanking Professor Mendocino and all of the faculty and staff who have joined to celebrate with you today. We will conclude with the tradition of singing the alma mater. After the alma mater, the students will process out of the hall, and we ask everyone to remain standing until the recessional is complete. Then we invite you to meet your students next door in Sales Hall for a reception out to the left when you leave the building. Now please rise to the alma mater that will be led by the Chatter Talks of Brown University. Thank you very much, Chatter Talks. If you don't know the words, it's in the program.